I found out my wife had a boy toy in New York City, so I blindsided her with divorce. Now let's get into this story. He starts off and he says, "Please note, I set up this account just for this post and don't plan to use it after my wife and I were just 6 weeks shy of our silver anniversary when I discovered she had a multi-year affair with a 32-year-old bartender from New York City. I usually refer to my soon-to-be ex-wife as Emma. She's 47 and I'm 48, and we have a grown-up son who's 24. I used to think we had an amazing marriage. Emma was like my closest buddy, the person I could rely on no matter what. We had a strong bond and hardly ever fought. Of course, we had our small tiffs, but we made sure to sort things out before calling it a night. In bed is where we really clicked as we both are very adventurous and have extremely high libidos. We liked doing everything and kept our relationship fresh by going on dates, taking romantic vacations, and making time for bedroom fun. Believe it or not, we still did it in the car or in the outdoors when we had the opportunity. I know this sounds immature, but that's how much we enjoyed each other. I was very happy in our marriage and believe she was too. I'll now explain how I found out. Did I find a racy email or text between her and her paramour? No. Did I catch them in the act? No. I found out through her lover's ex-girlfriend, who I'll call Luna. Luna found me on LinkedIn and sent me an email message asking to talk when Emma spoke to me about it. I was utterly confused and thought it might be some kind of joke she was pulling, that's until Luna sent me pictures and a video showing them together. That's when it all sank, and witnessing Emma in those moments with another guy completely broke me inside. I'll never be able to get those images out of my head, nor will I ever be able to forgive her. To me, she has committed the most egregious marriage violation imaginable, from which there is no coming back. Now, for background on how the affair started. Emma's corporate office is in New York City, and she travels there a couple of times a year for meetings. Her company likes to have these meetings during the first part of the week, so she normally flies out Sunday afternoon and comes back Tuesday evening. This has been the routine ever since she's worked for this company. When there, she always stays at one of the hotels within walking distance of the office. It was at one such hotel where she met her boy toy, a guy 15 years her junior who worked as a bartender. Wow, what a cliche. Luna shared that her ex said they had this instant connection and just randomly hooked up one night 3 years back. It's crazy how things can escalate, right? Apparently, they kept up this every 6 months hookup routine for 2 years until it ended last year, according to Luna. He mentioned they only met up 5 times, always on Sunday evenings, all in Emma's hotel room. He swore they never kissed and he always wore a condom, and the cop says yeah. Right? And listen, I don't believe that for 1 minute. Luna said she discovered the affair 6 months after it ended, after finding the graphic messages and pictures on his old smartphone. She confronted him, he confessed, and she kicked him out. Now how stupid can people be? I mean, first of all, they're cheating, which is just terrible. But then they're leaving all this stuff on their smartphone. Pictures and messages. Come on, you're not that stupid. Not being able to afford a place of his own in Manhattan, he was forced to quit his bartending job and move back out on Long Island. I asked Luna why she waited so long to contact me. She mentioned she never planned on letting me know, but her new boyfriend pushed her to spill the beans. Apparently, he'd been cheated on before and really can't stand cheaters. He insisted she had to come clean. That's why she finally did. When I asked her about why it ended, she said her ex told her Emma called it off because she confessed her love for me. What a mind F, he says. After learning all this, I took time to mourn and determine my next move. After giving it much thought, I've decided to divorce Emma. That's the right thing to do, Poppy. While I still love her, I will never trust her again and will always think of her in the loser bartender. I've also decided not to confront her and plan just to blindside her with divorce papers. I don't want to give her a chance to explain herself or listen to her excuses and apologies. I want to make the day she serves so dramatic that she feels worse than I felt when I found out about her affair. It's my revenge for her betrayal. In the meantime, I'm going to act like everything is normal and play nice, extra nice. My story proves this can happen to anyone, even after 27 years together. I never thought I'd be sharing my personal life like this, but here I am. To all the married folks out there, my advice is to never get too comfortable and always stay aware. Keep your eyes open at all times. My friends, marriages are built on trust. If your spouse betrays that trust, then they're not worthy of keeping around. The day the divorce papers are ready, I plan to move my belongings into storage and then have her served at work. When she calls me, I'll tell her I've known about everything for weeks and sent her one of the graphic pictures Luna sent to me to prove it. Every time she calls or texts me again after that, I'll send her another picture, then another hour, then let our families know I'm divorcing her. And why? Right now I feel good about my decision and can't wait for the day when I can destroy her life just like she's destroyed mine. After things play out, I'll come back to provide an update. Seems like things didn't go as expected for him. About 16 days after his initial post, he shared an update, frustrated that things didn't go smoothly. He had everything moved out in the morning as planned, and later that afternoon, a courier delivered the legal papers to Emma at her office, officially serving her the documents. As expected, she lost her mind and immediately called me, and I answered. I told her I knew about every detail about her affair with her boy toy bartender and had filed for divorce. She begged me to let her explain. I told her I had already moved out and she should get an attorney, then disconnected the call. As predicted, she started calling me and I sent her the first photo. With each additional attempt she made, I sent her another. At that point, everything was going as planned. That evening, I called my son and told him he was surprised and upset as you would expect. He asked me if there was any chance of working things out and I told him no, not after what she had done. I told him, son, never stay with a cheater. Seems like the conversation struck a chord with Opie. Right after our talk ended, I was about to reach out to my parents when my mom called. Luna had just left their place, apparently in a panic trying to find me. During her visit, she spilled the beans to my parents and revealed she's been in therapy since ending the affair last year. But here's the kicker, she confessed to them that she's been diagnosed with an S addiction. That's right, folks. She claims her cheating was all due to a mental addiction she has where she cannot resist the temptation of S. Can you believe this? No, I can't. And let's say, for instance, she does have this addiction. Well, how long has she had it for? Is this just something that's new or has she had this your entire relationship and been cheating on you all this time? But this is the only one you're finding out about. That's the question I'd have. I then handed over to my parents' house to talk with them. To my frustration, they both tried talking me out of divorcing Luna. They weren't condoning what she did, but said it says a lot that she broke off the affair on her own and has been in treatment ever since. My parents got pretty intense, especially my mom's side of things. I shared my belief that a guy shouldn't stick around after being cheated on, and I was really taken aback by their response. I made it clear that I see the whole addiction excuse as just that, an excuse for cheating. For me, the saying, if you do the crime, you must do the time, rings true. And when it comes to marital cheating, the ultimate consequence is divorce. And that's what I'm going to do. Before I left, my parents told me they will support whatever decision I make, but ask that I think about it. I told them I already had and left. When I got back to the apartment I rented, I called Luna's dad to tell him I was coming over to talk. He told me Luna was just there and she told them everything, just as she had done with my parents. He said he doesn't believe the whole addiction thing either, but asked if I would take some time before I threw in the towel. We talked more and I didn't promise anything, but I said I'd think about it. I'm very close with her parents, so divorcing will mean losing them too, which will be difficult. That night, Luna tried calling me several times, but I didn't answer. My son called on Saturday morning, mentioning that his mom had also reached out to him the previous night, coming clean about everything. I'll give her credit for taking ownership of her actions and confessing to our whole family. My son expressed his complete disgust with his mom's actions and assured me of his full support. He acknowledged the potential pressure from his grandparents and emphasized that he's behind whatever decision I make. He told me if his current girlfriend ever does something like this to him, he'll break up with her on the spot. So that's where things are now. I'm kind of in a temporary holding pattern while I want nothing more to fast-track divorcing my wife. I also don't want our families to think less of me for rushing things. Has anyone on here been in a situation like this? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you would do in this situation. So that's the end of his first update. And you can see already, he's starting to get bogged down by what the family thinks. Guys, always trust your instinct and don't let anyone sidetrack you from your objective. Seems like he's starting to get pulled in different directions by both her parents and his own. But before we dive into the community's responses, I just want to remind you, if you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this video reach a wider audience. Alright, now let's see what everyone has to say. She says, I strongly suggest you seek individual counseling and then both you and your wife go to marriage counseling before you end things. From what you described, it sounds like you had an awesome marriage save for this one indiscretion. One indiscretion, it lasted for 2 years and they were together at least 5 times that they admit to. So no, it's not just one indiscretion, she says. You don't want to look back when you're 80 years old and regret making a terrible life-changing decision. In time, all wounds heal. And in a few years, this whole thing will be a distant memory for you. No, he will never forget this. And he will think about this till his dying day. If he stays in this marriage, the next response is from a guy. He says, this is a tough one. It does show good faith that your wife ended the affair and put herself into counseling. That indicates to me she's remorseful and wants to work on herself. On the other hand, the whole "I'm an addict" thing is just a smoke screen for cheating. I went through something similar with my ex and tried to work it out. But after a year I decided it wasn't working for me and we divorced. I'm now happily remarried. The next response is from a woman. She says, "I don't like the way you blindsided your wife without giving her a chance to explain the affair and what she has done to improve herself. That was cruel and indicates to me you may have underlying anger issues that likely influenced your wife's desire to stray." Isn't it funny how when a guy has standards, when a guy has principles, he's viewed as being insecure or having underlying anger issues? That's a lot to take in. Some people might suggest talking it out and giving it a shot for 6 months to see if things get better before considering divorce. Then there's another guy's take. He went through something similar during the pandemic when his wife cheated and his move was to kick her out and file for divorce right away. Then, after 6 months of her begging, I let her back in my life as an FWB, a friends with benefits. She knows she's not my number one, she's not even my number two, and she accepts it as she has no other choice if she wants me in her life. So this guy is getting, kind of like the best of both worlds, but I really don't think that's a good idea. So now the Opus comes back with his second update. 12 days later he says, "I've read all your comments and appreciate the advice, even from those of you I disagree with. Let me first say I'm still moving forward with the divorce, but I have agreed to meet with my soon-to-be ex to clear the air, so to speak. I've decided to give her an hour to explain herself against my attorney's advice." He warned me against it, but insisted that if I do, we meet at his office and record the conversation. I proposed meeting at a neutral spot with witnesses and recording the talk. He agreed, but cautioned me to be super careful about what I say or do, as he's seen situations like this go wrong for the person who's been hurt. I've set the meeting up for next Tuesday at her parents' house. My son will be with me and is going to record it using his tripod gimbal. He, along with my in-laws and my mom, will be in the next room. My dad can't be there because he has a doctor's appointment at that time. I'm meeting with her just to check the box that I at least met with Luna to satisfy my parents and in-laws. I'll update here after I speak with Luna. So that's the end of his second update. Then he comes back 9 days later with another update. He says, "We had the meeting and it went better than I expected. But it was difficult for me. I let her speak uninterrupted. The only thing I asked is that she not use the addiction thing as an excuse, and she agreed she wouldn't. She began by saying how much she loves and misses me, admitting that what she did was really dumb and meaningless. It was all the typical stuff you'd expect from someone who's cheated. When she looked at me for a reaction, I just said okay and gave her a look like, is that all? Then she went on to explain that she realized her mistake last year after carrying on the affair for 2 whole years, and since that time she has put herself into therapy. She said she kept all this from me for obvious reasons, as she didn't want to lose me." Luna said therapy has really helped her and that her therapist felt she had now worked through the mental drivers that made her cheat. I asked if her therapist felt this was just a temporary thing. Luna said yes. I then asked her what happens when the next 30-year-old bartender comes along. She just looked at me and started crying. I told her she better continue as the clock was running. She then transitioned into asking me if I had been happy with her and if there was anything more she could have done for me throughout our marriage. I told her I was very happy before this, and yes, there were things she could have done. The most important things, being trustworthy and loyal. Luna said she was as she loved only me. I gave her a side. I looked and laughed in her face. She then tried explaining herself, which didn't go well. She said she only cheated when she was away, and therefore never neglected me. Seriously, I couldn't believe it. She continued, saying they never kissed and he always used protection, like that made it somehow better. And the way she was saying all this, it's like she expected me to be impressed or give her credit for it. I had to stop her and point out how ridiculous it all sounded. I asked her to really think about what she was saying because it sounded totally absurd. She claimed she wasn't justifying her actions, just trying to explain her reasoning. I asked her why she do it. If she was so happy, she said she was just taken away with the idea of a young, handsome guy being interested in her physically. She said, even though I made her feel beautiful, she felt like she was no longer attractive. You see how the attention and validation comes into play here. Now by this time, 44 minutes had passed, and I told her she had 14 minutes left to give me her elevator speech. She told me if I gave her another chance, we could go right back to where we were before. I again told her that was impossible, as I could never trust her and will always imagine her with her boy toy. Every time I look at her, she then suggested a one-sided open relationship as an option. She said I could do whatever I wanted with whoever I wanted and she'd remain faithful to me. I shut that idea down immediately and made it clear I wasn't anything like her. That really hit her hard and she started crying, pleading for me to give our relationship another chance. I stayed silent while she cried and begged. When the hour was over, I stood up, grabbed the gimbal with my son's phone, and walked out of the room without saying a single word. Before I left, I had my son send me the video via the Dropbox app, and I left. Luna sent me a text later that evening thanking me for meeting with her, but I never reply. Now that I checked that box, I plan on calling my attorney in the morning and telling him to fast-track the divorce process. So that's the end of his third update. And then he comes back with his final update, so we can see how everything turned out. And this final update comes 11 months after his last update. So more than a year after he first posted, he says, "Hello everyone. I'm sorry for not providing an update sooner, but I've obviously had a lot going on. Our divorce was finalized last Wednesday. We divided everything evenly, and she chose to stay in our family home, buying out my share of the equity. She mentioned it was because she hopes that one day we might reunite and live there together again." The divorce process was really tough for me emotionally and mentally. As time passed, I started to doubt my decision and considered calling off the divorce, thinking about getting back together with Luna many times. But I knew if I did, I'd end up being miserable. Complicating matters further, when we went in for our first hearing, the judge ordered 60 days worth of counseling for us. 60 days. She told our attorneys that we had to complete the sessions before she'd hear the case. I asked my attorney if she had the authority to demand this, and he said she does, and there wasn't much we could do about it. He warned me against making a big fuss or challenging things because it might not work in my favor, and the judge might see it negatively. So, even though I didn't want to, I went through 16 sessions. It was really tough and felt pointless from my perspective, not so much with Luna but with the therapist. She seemed to put all the attention and blame on me. I had to remind her a few times that I wasn't the one who cheated here. Eventually, after feeling browbeat for several sessions, I came up with a strategy to get her off my back. I told her that I viewed Emma as my worst enemy. She asked me why I would say that, and I explained that no one has ever betrayed me like she has. I made it clear to the therapist that nobody in my family, none of my friends, and none of my co-workers had ever cheated except for Emma. That shattered my trust in her, and staying married was just not an option. The therapist didn't really have a strong response to that, so I brought it up in every session, and it seemed to have an impact. Once the counseling sessions were done, there was a follow-up hearing and the rest of the divorce process went by without much trouble. The judge asked if we attended counseling and what the outcome was. My attorney stated we had and that my decision was to proceed with the divorce. Luna's attorney said Luna appreciated me attending the sessions, but that it was her wish that we would reconcile. The judge said that doesn't seem possible at this point, so we will proceed with the hearing. And 85 minutes later, it was all over. To Luna's credit, she gave me space and didn't try contacting me between our counseling sessions and said everything she had to say in the sessions themselves the whole time. She never tried blaming me and just kept stating that her primary goal in life was to remain my wife. She even stepped in a few times when the therapist was being difficult and told her that I wasn't the bad guy. There she was, Luna. She could have made things a lot harder and costlier, but she didn't, and I was thankful for that. Now here's where things took an interesting turn. I actually took her out to dinner the day after our divorce was official, and then headed back to what was once our house, her place, for a nightcap. We ended up getting physical for the first time in over a year. What are you doing, guy? You just got divorced with this woman and now you're hopping back in the sack with her. Are you out of your mind? He says it was great and I felt really good about everything afterwards. Now you may be asking yourself, how does this make sense? Well, for me, I just couldn't stay married to her after she cheated and wouldn't even consider living with her again. But that doesn't mean I don't desire her physically, because I do and likely always will. She understands our relationship going forward will be just a physical thing, kind of like she had with the bartender. She told me she'll accept that for now, but said she wants more and will never stop trying. While I haven't started dating yet, I'm considering it and Emma's aware of this. I talked to Luna about it and made it clear that if I get into a serious relationship with someone else, our relationship would have to end. Luna said she gets it, but doesn't want to think about it and isn't a fan of the idea. She also mentioned she intends to stay faithful and committed to me even if I do find someone new. While I miss the way things used to be, I like this new arrangement we have. And for the first time in a long time, I feel good about myself in the future. So that's the end of his story. Now let me just comment on this. First of all, he found out she was cheating on him. He took the appropriate action. He filed for divorce. He blindsided her with divorce. Now I'm not saying, hey, you need to do that. but he wanted to get a little revenge on her, and that was his way of doing it. So he was handling things appropriately all the way up to the point where they get divorced. And then the following day, he jumps right back in bed with her and establishes what is like an FWB relationship. You know, I've seen similar stuff before on here. Some guys try to do two things at once, and I think it's a big mistake. If you really want to get on with your life, you can't do that while holding on to the past. To the guy doing this, it might feel like having everything, but I don't think it works that way. It's like wanting to eat two different foods at the same time and expecting to enjoy both fully, but it just doesn't happen like that. I don't have any commitment. I'm getting the good stuff whenever I want it and life is good, but he's never going to move forward from that relationship. He's always going to be tied to her, and I think that's a big mistake. Now let's take a look at what I think are the morals of this story. And there are some important ones. The first one, never get too comfortable with your partner. He even said that right up front. Next, some women are really good at hiding their affairs. If this guy's girlfriend didn't come forward and contact him, then he would have never found out. Next, women often cheat just for validation and attention. That was the case with this woman. There's this idea that certain ages are risky for women when it comes to cheating. People talk about 30 and 50 being these moments. At 30, some say women reach a point where their looks might change, and there's this belief that their ability to have kids starts to slow down. Then at 50, they're heading into menopause or getting close to it. Some think that during these times, women might want to feel young again and go searching for someone who finds them attractive. Next, women control their bodies, but men control the relationship. Just like in this story, this man was in control of whoever she let into her body, but in the end, you saw her husband had control of the relationship. Next, beware when dating a divorced woman, as she still may be having relations with her ex-husband. How many of these stories have I covered where it was found out that the wife or the girlfriend was still having relations with her ex-husband? Guys, be cautious and stay alert. And you know what I always say, after cheating, it's best to break it off and move forward. Don't follow this guy's path and go back to a relationship with her. Even if it's just friends with benefits, sometimes it might sound amazing. But if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. So those are my thoughts, and now I want to hear from you. What did you think of this story, and how do you think this guy handled it? Would you have gotten into an FWB relationship with your wife after you divorced her for cheating on you? And if you've experienced something like that, tell us about it in the comments.